News coming out in just the past couple of hours, as we have heard that the nuclear talks between the United States and Iran have failed. Now, I'm going to share with you the latest headlines and articles, but we're hearing is that just in the past couple of hours, the U.S. is now saying it is time to evacuate the Middle East. I'm going to share with you the articles, and we're also hearing that at this very moment, Iran, the supreme leader, has now come out and said the U.S. must evacuate because we are kicking them out, because talks have failed and we are about to enter into attacks. And Iran is threatening to attack the United States. The U.S. and Israel are threatening to attack Iran. And it looks like we are about to enter into war. So if you are somebody that has been saying that the Middle East conflict is going to end up in war, it looks like you might be right. Now, it has not officially been announced yet. It has not officially been said that the talks have failed, but it's looking like that is the route we're going. And also, we have heard that the 6th round of talks are now essentially canceled, that they were unable to come to a scheduling agreement, and it looks like things have fallen apart. So today, June 12th, 2025, let's take a look at the latest headlines with me. Israel is considering military action against Iran in the coming days, sources say. We are now hearing that attacks will likely be coming in days. In addition to that, we're also hearing that Trump has acknowledged that Israel could attack Iran soon. So we're hearing that this is likely going to be unfolding here in the next coming days. And take a look at what else is coming out today. Iran is breaking the rules on nuclear activity. The UN watchdog says they have confirmed this. The decision comes as officials say they believe that Israel is preparing to launch a military attack on Iran, and Tehran has condemned the vote. And in addition to that, take a look at what Iran had to say. Iran then comes out and announces they have a new nuclear enrichment site after the UN watchdog's censure. They are saying, we don't care what you say. In fact, we have hidden nuclear sites that we are now announcing today, and we're going to move forward with nuclear enrichment so that way we can obtain a nuclear bomb if we so choose. An exclusive coming out 6 hours ago. U.S. fears Iran's response to Israeli strike would be mass casualty event, and we're hearing this is the direction it is going. Now, I'm going to get you caught up on
I recently visited Hiroshima in Japan and stood at the epicenter of a city that remains scarred by the unimaginable horror caused by a single nuclear bomb dropped in 1945, 80 years ago. Yet this one bomb that caused so much destruction in Hiroshima was tiny compared to today's nuclear bombs. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of just 15 kilotons of TNT, whereas today's nuclear warheads range in size from 100 kilotons to over 1 megaton. A single nuclear weapon today could kill millions in just minutes. Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core: people, buildings, life itself. The shockwave would crush structures miles away, killing and maiming countless people. And then comes the fallout. Radioactive poison spreading through the air, water, and soil, condemning survivors to agonizing deaths or lifelong suffering. A nuclear winter could follow, with smoke and ash completely blocking the sun, plunging the world into darkness and cold, killing crops and starving billions. Acid rain would scar the earth, wiping out entire ecosystems. This isn't some made-up science fiction story. This is the reality of what's at stake, what we are facing now. Because as we stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before, political elite and warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers. Perhaps it's because they are confident that they will have access to nuclear shelters for themselves and for their families that regular people won't have access to. So it's up to us, the people, to speak up and demand an end to this madness. We must reject this path to nuclear war and work toward a world where no one has to live in fear of a nuclear holocaust.
This is Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. And it reads, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah. And a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwat, who are believing this word. in all truth and in sincerity. I want to go into a lesson based on the clip that you just saw of the recent news of the tension between Iran and the U.S. and how it relates to prophecy. You know, for those who don't know, according to prophecy, World War III will happen. All right. The things that we see happening on the earth right now concerning the wars and rumors of wars will not remain rumors for long. Eventually, a global war will ensue. All right. That's why it says the second war is past concerning World War II. And now we're on the brink of World War III. All right. This is Matthew chapter 24. And I want to start at verse 6. And it reads, you know what? I'm going to start at verse 3. And it reads, as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Yahushua answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Hamashiach, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. All right. And we know, according to prophecy, that World War III will happen. All right. Right now, all right, for those who don't know, the U.S. has called for an evacuation of the Middle Eastern region. Now, Iran and other news basically said that they pushed America out because of the recent negotiations about the nuclear capability of Iran. You know, basically, U.S. came to the table and basically said to Iran, you know, we don't want you to have a nuclear program, you know, and basically, as the scriptures say, the weak are basically saying that they're strong. And the reason we say that is because 50, 60, 70 years ago, a lot of these nations wouldn't speak the way they speak toward America. All right. And it's because they now have confidence, because Russia has now emerged on the scene as a guard unto these other nations. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 9. And it reads, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All right. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? All right. And this is the attitude that these other nations are, projecting on the world stage. And it's because the Russians are now a guard unto these other nations, these opposing nations like China, like Iran. You know, the conflict in Ukraine, even though it's not talked about as much on the news, the reason it's not discussed on as much on the news anymore is because Ukraine is losing. They're losing terribly. And they have enough weapons, but they don't have enough bodies. So they are losing the war desperately. And this is giving confidence to these other nations that now see Russia as an alternative to the American empire. All right, let's go here. This is Ezekiel 38. And I'll start at 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. All right, now this is referring to the Russians. But when you look at these terms, the land of Magog, Meshech, and Tubal, those are Japhetic names. Why? Because the Edomites that are known as Russians today occupied the land of Japheth, the biblical land of Japheth. All right, so it's referring to the Russians as they're called today, but their biblical location is the land of Japheth. They're still Edomites, but the Lord is referring to that landmass and the Edomites that reside there today. Verse 3 reads, and say, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I'm against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, which are the Iranians, all right, their biblical nationality is Elam. Ethiopia, all right, going into Ham. Libya, with them, going into Ham. All of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togomar of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Verse 6 is going into the Turks, which are Edomites in the land of Turkey that subscribe to Islam. Still Edomites, but they still subscribe to Islam going back to the Ottoman Empire. All right, now continuing, here's the point. Verse 7, be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself thou, and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. All right, and that's exactly what Russia is acting as, a guard. The same way the European nations hide behind America, for lack of a greater term. The Russians are on the front line right now fighting this war in Ukraine. North Korea sent help. China sent help to Russia as far as the Ukrainian conflict. But Russia's the main party in the fight against Ukraine. Now, the greatest thing you can give a military is live experience, not drills, but real time experience, which would make the Russians arguably one of the greatest armies on the face of the earth at this moment, one of them. And it's because they have the live experience of being on the battlefield and being accustomed to battle. Now, the Lord is sharpening these Russians up because ultimately there is going to be a conflict, and that is World War III. Now, concerning the lesson that I want to go into based on the clips, I have an article, and it said, this is from Zero Hedge. ZeroHedge.com. It says all U.S. bases within our reach. Iran responds to threats from Washington. Now, there was a point in time where Iran, or any other nation for that matter, wouldn't even think to rise up to basically taunt, all right, or reply to threats. But now we're in a different time, in a different season. All right, continuing, it says Iran's defense minister, Aziz Nazirzadeh, said Wednesday that Tehran will strike U.S. military bases in the region if nuclear talks fail and Washington decides to launch an attack on the Islamic Republic. Some officials on the other side threaten conflict if negotiations don't come to fruition. If a conflict is imposed on us, all U.S. bases are within our reach, and we will boldly target them in host countries. Nazirzadeh said during a press conference, warning the U.S. to leave the region in the case of any conflict. All right. And we just got the recent news. I don't know if it was today or the day before yesterday. It might have been yesterday. But the news of the evacuation concerning the consulate, the embassies, basically an evacuation of U.S. personnel from the Middle Eastern region, which means this threat is being taken very seriously. All right. And this is not including the news of the state of Israel planning an attack. All right. Planning a preemptive attack on Iran. Now, we know that there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, but we also know, according to prophecy, eventually these conflicts are going to escalate. Contrary to popular belief, the God of the Bible wants this war to ensue, and it will happen. All right. As a matter of fact, let's go here. It's not going to be a close call. It's going to happen. All right, whether it happens now or 6 months from now, a year from now, 2, 3 years, 4 years, it doesn't matter. Eventually, World War III will happen according to prophecy. All right, this is Isaiah 55:11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. Because Christianity doesn't know, but the lake of fire is describing America being on fire from coast to coast. It's described as a lake of fire because, again, these nuclear missiles will be used on Babylon the Great, which is America. Not only will the enemies of America fire missiles, but also the said allies will turn against her, pursuant to Revelation 17. All right, and let's jump down to verse 16. All right, and it says, and the 10 horns going into the EU nations, which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. All right. That her is talking about America. All right. And those 10 horns, all right, is going into the EU nations that were confederate with America. But now we see tension between the EU nations and America. All right. And we know, according to prophecy, that is also going to eventually dissolve into conflict. All right. Thus saith the Lord. All right. And let me go back here, because now we have a situation where people don't think it's like these other nations don't feel like it's a problem to speak up against the Americans in the West, the Edomites in America, the Edomites in the West. Why? Because now the world is changing. These other nations now have, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah, they now have this rebellious spirit against Babylon the Great. They have a rebellious spirit against the current world order. And it's because the Lord has raised up these Russians to now be an option. China has been raised up as an economic power, fashioning itself in the image of the beast. All right, let's go here. This is Joel chapter 3 and verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. All right, with the point being that the nations have now beat their plowshares into swords. Nations have gradually invested more in their military than they have their agriculture or anything else. Because the climate of the world is war. All right. You can smell it in the air, so to speak. And now these nations are preparing themselves, and these nations are all right. When you deal with nations like Russia, they're already prepared. And this is why you see the rhetoric happening on the world stage, where Iran is basically saying, look, tell America to get out of the Middle Eastern region because there's going to be conflict. There's going to be an attack. And if it was an empty threat, America wouldn't evacuate their personnel from out of the Middle Eastern region. Now, we know Yahweh Shaphat is in that Levant region. All right. Yahweh Shaphat, meaning the Heavenly Father's judgment. All right. Yahweh's judgment. Going into the matter of fact, let's go here. Joel 3 and 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So that Levant region is where the Lord's going to gather these troops. So as we see the conflict heating up in the Middle Eastern region, we know it all correlates with prophecy. Now, it's not to say that this conflict right now, this week, is going to end up in World War III, but these are all these gradual steps that lead up to the conflict. You know, a beautiful point that was brought up not too long ago is that they didn't call it World War II when they were actually fighting. It was only after the fact. But it went on for years. You had certain nations that were already fighting, and then eventually other nations got dragged into it. And then on the aftermath, people look back at it and said it was World War II. And I say that to say that the wars, the skirmishes that you see happening across the globe, they're really attached to two main characters, if you will. That's the West dealing with America as the leading agent, and then the East with the Russians and the Chinese as the leading agents. A lot of these conflicts are proxies, where if the U.S. or Russians don't have boots on the ground, they're supporting opposite sides. And just like World War II, you had a bunch of battles, and then eventually other nations just got dragged into the conflict. Same thing happened with World War I. And during both conflicts, they didn't call it World War I or World War II when it was happening. And the world is gradually heating up to a point where the world, the globe, the average people on the planet don't even realize that we're in a time of the world, of the Third World War. And the watchman's job through the Spirit, Lord willing, we be a part of that number, is to bring it back to the source, which is the Heavenly Father. because the Lord called it before we experienced it. All right, now let me go back to this article. I got a little bit more. All right, this is from the Iranians. All right. Again, I'm going to get his name. This is Defense Minister Aziz Nazir Zadeh. I'm going to jump back down. It says, we have made very good progress in defense affairs. Our operational forces are fully equipped. The defense minister added, revealing that Iran recently tested a missile with a 2-ton warhead. If a conflict is imposed on us, the casualties of the other party will definitely be much heavier than ours, he went on to say. The comments came in response to escalating threats from Washington, coinciding with the increased tension in nuclear talks between Iran and the U.S. And see, Babylon the Great, which is America, can't bully nations like they used to. It just doesn't work no more. All right. They're calling America's bluff, and eventually it's going to escalate. All right. It says, when asked at a hearing of the House of Representatives on Tuesday if Washington is prepared to respond with overwhelming force to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran, the chief of U.S. Central Command said he has provided the Secretary of Defense and the president a wide range of options. U.S. President Donald Trump said on the same day in an interview with Fox News' Bret Baier that Iran has become much more aggressive in nuclear talks. They're just asking for things you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up, adding that it is disappointing because the alternative is a very, very dire one. And now they're calling your bluff. These nations are tired of getting bullied. You know, they're tired of you saying that you can have nuclear weapons, but they can't. You know, these are sovereign nations. And you've turned the world into a wilderness, and you're telling them they can't defend themselves. They can't have the same weapons that everybody else has to defend themselves. And this is what happens when a hypocrite is in rulership. You're able to possess. You're the only nation that's actually dropped an atomic bomb on anybody. Yet you're telling other nations that they can't have them. It's hypocritical. And this is why, as Donald Trump put it, Iran is much more aggressive. Why? Because they watched the Russians, all right, basically win this proxy war. America sent all those weapons to Ukraine, and they still got their ass kicked. Because it don't matter what weapons you have if you don't have bodies to hold the weapons, if you don't have the technical expertise to use the weapons, the training. You know, at this point, they had to have a forced draft in Ukraine. The average soldier was 40 years old at one point. And now they're losing. It's really just written already in stone that they've lost. It's just a matter of time. But the world saw that. The world saw the U.S. and its allies paint Russia to be out the bad guy, paint Russia out to be incompetent on the battlefield, only for them to lose. They gave all these millions and billions of dollars in weapons, and they still lost. You don't think the Iranians saw that? You don't think the Chinese saw that? They did. And now they're becoming bolder by the minute. And eventually, according to prophecy, this is going to escalate into war. All right. Matter of fact, let me get this. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and 28. It says, behold, in horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, and all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. Now, the Carmanians, for those who don't know, that's a reference to the Iranians. All right, the Carmanians is a reference to the Iranians, Salakia. The Carmanians is a reference to the Iranians, whose biblical nationality is Elam. All right, matter of fact, let me see. Let's see if I can get this real quick. I just want to get this info real quick. Yep. Perfect. It says Carmanians were an ancient people inhabiting Carmania, a region in ancient Persia, modern Kerman province in Iran. So this is referring to the Iranians. See, the Lord called all of this before we lived it. And now it's being talked about like it's regular on Fox News and CNN, and nobody's batting an eye. That's why the Lord talked about the eye salve in Revelation, the 3rd chapter. Because the Lord has given the elect the ability to see this according to prophecy. Where the world looks at this as random events, we understand that there's a plan, there's an agenda. Whether people like it or not, the Lord is active in the earth. All right, let me continue. Verse 31, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, and that they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them. Then these shall be troubled, bled, and keep silence through their power, and shall flee. And from the land of the Assyrians shall the enemy besiege them, and consume some of them, and in their host shall be fear and dread and strife among their kings. All right, now when you deal with the Assyrians, the modern day Assyrian is the Americans. All right, so we're watching, all right, we're reading prophecy, and then you look into your reality and it's actually happening. All right, the world is at a tipping point. All right, and we know it's according to prophecy, and there will be no close calls. All right, I want to emphasize that because a lot of these Americans, they look at the world we live in today and they feel like it's a close call and that America will remain on top forever. And that's just not the case. All right. And we see that through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Shema Shai. But again, the world has to find out through judgment. All right. Psalms 9:16. The Lord is known by the judgment which he executed. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwad, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.